A personal prelude. I was not born a writer. I never planned to be one. In truth, most of my life was spent building things, structures, systems, and businesses, more than words. I was trained as an engineer, guided by numbers, deadlines, and concrete plans. Yet somewhere in that long journey of calculations and deadlines, God began to write something different on the blueprint of my life. A story not of steel or oil, but of spirit. Like many, I started my career chasing success the way the world defines it: position, respect, comfort, security. I worked in oil refining and distribution, a field of power and precision, and I learned that efficiency can build industries, but not necessarily peace. There were victories, yes, but also quiet emptiness. In moments when success was loud, something inside me grew quieter, like a whisper I couldn't yet understand. Then life, in its patient way, began to speak more clearly. There were seasons of loss, moments of failure, and times when I felt the weight of questions no diploma could answer. What is all this for? Who am I becoming? Why does my heart still feel restless? That restlessness was grace beginning to work. Grace that interrupts, grace that unsettles. It was during one of those quiet turning points that I realized I had spent years learning how to build things, but very little time learning how to listen. Listening not just to people, but to God. And when I finally did, the answers didn't come in thunder. They came in whispers, through scripture, through silence, through ordinary days that suddenly felt sacred. I began to write. At first, it was just for myself, short reflections, stray thoughts, the kind of scribbles you keep in the margins of a notebook. But the more I wrote, the more I discovered that words can heal, not only those who read them, but also the one who writes them. Writing became prayer, reflection became dialogue, and soon a mission began to take form. I started sharing my reflections online, small pieces of faith meant to reach anyone who might be scrolling in the dark. It felt awkward at first. I had no grand platform, no expectation. But people began to respond. One message, one story, one reflection at a time. Hearts were touched. That's how I became what I now call a digital apostle, an ordinary man using technology not for noise, but for meaning. It was never about fame or followers. It was about planting seeds, small ones, but faithful ones, across a world that often forgets how to be still. As I look back, I see that everything in my life, my training as an engineer, my years in the corporate world, my experiences in family and faith, was preparation. God was shaping me quietly, teaching me discipline through work, resilience through loss, compassion through failure, and humility through success. Now, in this season of life, I understand what I couldn't before, that faith is not lived on mountaintops, but in the ordinary, in traffic, in conversations, in quiet mornings with coffee, in moments of loss and waiting. Grace, I've learned, doesn't always come wrapped in miracles. Most of the time, it comes disguised as ordinary life. This book is the fruit of that realization. It is not meant to preach, but to share, not to impress, but to awaken. It is my way of telling you, the reader, the seeker, that even in this noisy, cynical, digital world, God still speaks. And if you pause long enough, you will hear him. Every reflection that follows, whether it talks about love, integrity, patriotism, or pain, springs from one truth: that faith and life are not separate paths, but one continuous journey home. I am no saint, no theologian, no celebrity, just a man who has gone a long way already, who has seen both the weight and wonder of this world, and who now wishes to spend the rest of his life doing one thing: sharing light where it can still reach hearts. If my words, even once, make you stop and whisper, Yes, I've felt that too. Then my journey has found its purpose. So walk with me now. Let's rediscover grace, not in the extraordinary, but in the ordinary, where faith quietly waits to be seen again. The night everything changed, there was a night when everything I had built came crashing down. Literally. A car accident left my body broken, my plans shattered, and my future uncertain. Bones were crushed, hours of surgery followed, and for a while I lived between two worlds, the one I could see and the one I was being called toward. I survived, though the word survive barely captures it. What happened that night was not endurance. It was mercy. It was the hand of God, quiet yet undeniable, turning destruction into direction. In the silence of recovery, I began to listen, really listen, for the first time. It was there, in pain and helplessness, that I first heard what would shape the rest of my life. God does not always rescue us from suffering. Sometimes He rescues us through it. That accident did not end my story. It started the one I was meant to tell. Every book that followed, every reflection, every whisper in these pages, they all trace their beginning to that night when everything stopped and grace began to write, when purpose replaces pressure. There was a time when I thought success meant speed, that the faster I achieved, the more I mattered. I filled my days with deadlines and called it drive. I filled my heart with expectations and called it ambition. But somewhere along the way, I realized that what I called progress was really pressure. Pressure to prove, to compare, to perform. Then one day I understood what God had been whispering all along. You were not made to perform. You were made to become. Purpose is not found by running faster. It is discovered by walking with God. It is not the list of what we do, but the reason why we do it. The world tells us to climb higher, to win more, to show more. But heaven measures differently. It asks, did you love well? Did you lift others? Did you walk in peace? When purpose replaces pressure, life becomes lighter. We no longer need to chase applause or fear failure. We realize that God's measure of success is not how much we have done, but how much love we have poured into what we do. Every task, from answering an email to comforting a friend, becomes holy when done with the right heart. So breathe. You don't have to compete to matter. You don't have to rush to arrive. You are already on the path God designed for you. Walk it slowly, faithfully, and gratefully, because purpose is not a finish line. It is the quiet assurance that your every step, however small, is leading you home. Reflection. Prompt. What pressures do you carry today that God never asked you to bear? If you replace them with purpose, what would change in the way you live, work, or pray?